Chapter 145. Graham let go of Lady Virginia's gown when he saw Keith's foot pass the threshold of the doorway. His straining expression faded. It became clear to Graham they were about to face keeping another person away from the light. He lunged forward, seized Keith by his hair and a belt loop, yanked him back, and threw him onto the ballroom floor. Lyle grabbed Graham by the shirt when he nearly fell inside next, and tossed him away too. He landed on top of Keith with a groan and rolled to one knee. Keith shook his head, struggling to stand. "What a rush!" he gasped. "Dude," JT called, his heart starting again, "don't you dare do that again." "I won't," Keith replied, helping Graham up. They returned to Lady Virginia, taking their places on her gown once again. Everyone was behind her, pulling. McKee alternated between pulling and slapping Mr. D's hand away each time he reached out to his sister through the doorway. Mr. D glared at him angrily, but said nothing. There was nothing he could say. Mickey's presence caused him to follow the rules to the letter. There were times that child annoyed him beyond words. Mr. D believed he might regret when it was time to collect him. He smiled as Virginia slipped into the light. Another inch, maybe two, and victory would be his. "Oh, crap!" Dabney cried, putting his foot up on the door jamb. Using his legs, he pulled back with all of his might. "We're losing her!" "No!" Chris cried in a panic. "Pull harder!" "We're trying, man," Ricardo groaned. "Try harder!" Derek exclaimed. "I'm not losing anybody else. I'm not." "That's a foolish statement, Master Derek," Mr. D sighed. He slipped his gloves back on as the Lady Virginia stepped into the light. "You are destined to lose more than you ever bargained for. All of you are. A piece of advice: if you don't wish to see me again any time soon, I suggest you endeavor not to be separated. You have strength in your numbers. There's a hunter in the wilderness, children, and he's coming for all of you." "Hiram!" Craig cried. "He means Hiram!" "Craig!" Jack exclaimed. "Look out!" The material of Lady Virginia's flowing gown suddenly detached from her dress and sent her rescuer sprawling. Lyle hit the floor first. A landslide of teenage boys tumbled down on top of him. He grunted and groaned as he tried to break all of their falls. He only missed Ricardo, who slammed flat on his back with a loud oof and a smack. Graham, JT, Dougie, and Jack recovered first. They dove at the doorway, but Mr. D held up his hand, freezing them in midair. Mickey stormed over to him, with his crystal blue eyes filled with cold anger. Mr. D shook his head. "I'm sorry, Mickey," he whispered, his irises glowing red. "It's over." "Mom!" Chris cried. Max and Matt grabbed him from either side. "No, Mr. D," Mickey replied, nodding at the doorway. "Not quite yet." Mr. D glanced over, his brow furrowing. He was confused and then irritated as Virginia backed out of the doorway. He frowned, spotting a hand from the other side pushing her back. Whatever troublesome spirit it was interfering with his work would have an eternity to regret their actions. Mr. D opened his mouth to protest. Jeremy's giant glowing face appeared in the air. Mr. D mumbled, "It just isn't my day." "Jeremy!" the boys cried. "It's about damn time," Lyle bellowed. Mickey stared at him, shaking his head. "Must you curse?" Jeremy looked at his brother. Chris could tell by his expression something was wrong. "Please," Lady Virginia cried, struggling to get past the hand holding her back. "Let me by, okay? Thomas? Thomas, are you in there?" "Who the heck is that?" Keith cried, pointing at the hand. "Whoever it is," Jack said. "He's a friendly." "Jeremy?" Chris asked. He gazed up at the great and powerful Oz visage of his little brother. "What's going on? Why is the door still open?" Jeremy's face clouded. "I can't heal her," he said, his voice echoing loudly through the hall. Her body's in a state that won't let me interfere without her help. It keeps rejecting me. State? Dabney asked. He stepped up to steady Chris, who looked like he was going to faint. What kind of state? Lyle barked. She's pregnant, Jeremy replied, nodding at his mother. It's a girl. Lady Virginia suddenly spun around, snapping out of her trance. When she did, the arm of the spirit holding her back lost its grip. Sandy Sturgis, in a white tuxedo and tails, tumbled out of the doorway and landed right at the feet of the friends who watched him die. He looked up at them, adjusting his glasses. Hi, guys, he said, and smiled shyly. Sandy? They cried. Oh, my God, Sandy! Wait, Virginia cried, her gown disappearing along with her costumed hairdo and makeup. Blue jeans and a t-shirt replaced it. She ran away from the door directly under the image of her son. Jeremy, did you say I was... Jeremy smiled, feeling a rush of strength and renewed fight come into his mother's body. They all felt it and surrounded her, their fear fading away. Yeah, Mom, Jeremy smiled. You're knocked up. But how? Virginia asked. Your father and I were always so careful. Yeah, the boys nervously exclaimed. Oh, cut that out, Virginia groaned. She turned to Mr. D, shaking her head. I'm not going, Gabriel. I know, my dear, he sighed, and the doorway slammed shut. I suppose it's just as well. He smiled mischievously. It was fun, though, wasn't it? Until next time? Wait, Sandy exclaimed. Open the door. I have to go back. Mr. D glared at him with his red irises burning. I think not. His voice was like raging thunder. Sandy sank back against Chris, who grabbed him by the shoulders. You interfered where you had no place, Sanford. Let's see how you like being earthbound for a time, shall we? It might teach you some respect. Sanford? JT wondered. Not Master Sanford? Seriously, I don't get it. Mr. D turned to the others and bowed curtly. Adieu, he said. He added with a sly grin, for now. He vanished. Oh, nuts, Sandy muttered. What am I supposed to do now? Come with us, Chris said, turning him around. His eyes filled with tears. God, Sanford, I missed you. Do you know how much it hurt? Sandy reached out and tenderly touched his friend's cheek. His eyes filled with sympathy. I know, I missed you too. But it's not that simple, Chris. I'm dead, remember? I don't belong here anymore. But you do, McKee interjected, taking Sandy's hand. You overestimate Mr. D. He can't deny you entrance into the light. If you're still here, it's on a higher authority. You're right, Sandy nodded, his gaze far away. I can sense that now that you mention it. But why? Maybe because we love you too? Max suggested, patting Sandy on the back. Lyle rolled his eyes. I doubt it, Max. Lots of people we love die and don't come back. He thought about Marjorie. No kidding, Derek mumbled. True, McKee said. Then why is he here? Craig asked. I think the Lord will let us know that when the time is right, McKee said. Jeremy, you can take your friends out now. Jeremy nodded, looking down at his mother. Mom, are you okay? Virginia smiled weakly. You go ahead. I'll be okay. You can heal me now. She turned and gathered together Dabney, Derek, Dougie, Jack, and Craig. She squatted down in front of them. You boys listen to me, all right? She asked, holding their hands together. I know everything that's happened. When I stepped into the light, I saw it all. It's destiny, boys. Do you understand? It's all destiny. Mourn for what you've lost, but don't despair. You're my boys now, every one of you. You're part of my family. We'll get through this, I promise. We're going to live with you? Derek asked. All of us? Echoed Dabney. All of you, Virginia smiled. She looked at the Mellon brothers. Your grandmother will certainly agree. It's in your parents' will. She was part of the decision-making process when we planned for this. She would have taken you boys, but she felt she was too old to parent anymore. She held Derek's face lovingly, her eyes filled with sympathy and understanding. You guys don't know everything we parents do, she said. Derek choked back a sob. It's up to us to plan for every eventuality when it comes to raising our kids, even the worst ones we can imagine. What about me? Dabney asked, lowering his eyes. My father's a powerful man. Lyle snapped. Nuts, Copeland. You ain't seen powerful until this woman gets her panties in an uproar. Just ask Jack. He'll tell you. You got that right, Jack grinned. What about it, boys? Virginia asked, turning to Chris and Jeremy. Is there room in our hearts for a family as big as this? Jeremy and Chris looked at each other, smiled, and turned to the boys. Absolutely, they replied together. Matt groaned. Oh no, not that again. You guys give me the creeps when you do that. Oh, Jeremy smiled. What about if we, Chris continued, do something, Max added, like this, Keith said. Gorilla Boy, JT finished. Matt was dizzy from following the sentence. No, he pleaded, holding his hands up. I give. He scowled. Wait a minute. Gorilla Boy? Everyone turned to Graham. He smiled sheepishly. I saw him when he came in, he said, and signed. He's really hairy. They all laughed as they began to vanish. Sandy winked at Virginia. She mouthed thank you to him, and he disappeared. Virginia closed her eyes once. She was alone and made the guests from her party reappear. The music resumed. Outside the ballroom, the storm subsided, and the sun shone brightly. Her hand rested gently on her belly. She danced in the presence of the husband she loved and somehow felt radiating all around her.